Shabbat Shalom, good Shabbos, Shabbat Shalom, and welcome, Bruchim Habayim, to those who are here with us in the sanctuary, Shalom Temple Center in Green Valley, to those who are joining us from your own Mikdashei Me'at, from your own small sanctuaries at home. We welcome this Shabbat morning. I trust that you'll be able to follow along, if at all possible, in the Siddur in Mishkan Tefillah. We'll begin on page 74 with the traditional words of blessing and congratulations, as it were, and respect for the children of Israel. Ma tovu. Tovu ohalecha Yaakov Mishkenotecha Israel, Ma tovu ohalecha Yaakov Mishkenotecha Israel. La 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 la. And on page 75, please join with me. May the one whose spirit is with us in every righteous deed be with all who work for the good of humanity and bear the burdens of others, and who give bread to the hungry and clothe the naked and take the friendless into their homes. May the work of their hands endure, and may the seed they sow bring abundant harvest. Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher yatzar et ha'adam b'chokhmah, uvara vo nikuvim nikuvim, chalulim chalulim. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, sovereign of the universe. You formed the human body with skill, creating the body's many pathways and openings. It is well known before your throne of glory that if one of them be wrongly opened or closed, it would be possible to endure and stand before you. Baruch ata Adonai ofechal basar umafli la'asot. Blessed are you, Adonai, who heals all flesh, working wondrously. A prayer then, as we acknowledge our humanity and the wonders of our bodies, ability to share the Shabbat together. Page 78. Elohai, Elohai, Neshama, Shenatata bi Tehorahi. Elohai, Elohai, Neshama, Shenatata bi Tehorahi. Ata birata, ata yitzarta, ata nefach, ve'ata meshamra b'kirbi. Elohai, Elohai, Neshama, Shenatata bi Tehorahi. My God, the soul that you have given me is a pure one. You created it, you shaped it, you breathed it into me, and you protect it within me. For as long as my soul is within me, I offer thanks to you, Adonai, my God. You are the God of my ancestors, the source of all creation, the sovereign of all souls. Praised are you, Adonai. In your hand is every living soul and the breath of humankind. Baruch ata Adonai, asher bi'ado nefesh kol chai, v'ruach kol b'sar ish. Our morning blessings, Nisim b'chol yom, beginning on page 80 of the prayer book and continuing through page 85. I would invite you to continue silently, privately, independently, individually, either with the traditional words of blessing, our daily miracles that we acknowledge, or with the sense of wonder and freedom that we experience this morning as we share our worship together. So for the next few pages, Hebrew, English, traditional words, or your private thoughts, and then we'll continue again with the song praising God for giving us the Shabbat day. So between pages 80 and 85. On page 96, this is Psalm 92. Mizmor shir liyom hashabbat, tov lehodot la'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, lezamer l'shimcha elyon. Mizmor shir liyom hashabbat, tov lehodot la'Adonai, ulezamer l'shimcha elyon, lezamer l'shimcha elyon. להגיד בבוקר חסדך, באמונתך בלילות, עלי עשור ועלי נבל, עלי היגיון בחינות. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, לזמר לשמך עליון. מזמור שיר ליום השבת, טוב להודות לאדוני, ולזמר לשמך עליון, לזמר לשמך עליון. אשרי יושבי ביתך עוד יהללוך סלה, אשרי העם שככה לו, אשרי העם שאדוני אלוהיו. Happy and fortunate are those who dwell in your house, O God, they forever praise you. Happy the people who have it so to see, happy the people whose God is Adonai. Page 101. 101. Nishmat kol chai tevarech et shimcha Adonai Eloheinu. Let the soul of everything alive bless your name, Adonai our God, and the spirits of all flesh glorify and exalt your name forever, O Sovereign. Transcending space and time, you alone are God. We have no sovereign besides you. God of the first and the last, God of all creatures, Master of all generations, you are praised in a multitude of praises. You guide the world with abundant loving kindness, and all creatures with mercy. Adonai neither slumbers nor sleeps. God awakens the sleeping and arouses those who slumber. God gives speech to the mute. God loosens the bonds of captives and supports the fallen, strengthening those who are bent over. You alone do we acknowledge. Lechalavadcha anachnu modim. Page 106. Chatzi Kaddish, Kaddish Le'ela, page 106. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbi, Yamad yivrach yidutei v'yamlich malchutei, v'chayechon uv'yomechon, uv'chayedcho beit Yisrael, Bahagala, Uvismahan Kari, Vimeru, Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabba Mivarach, Le'olam Olol Me'omaya, Yitbarach, Yitbarach, V'yishtabach, V'yitba'ar, V'yitramam, V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar, V'yitale, V'yitalal, Shmeid Kudsha, B'richu, Le'ela min kol birchata v'shihirata, tushbechata v'nechemata, damiran b'yalma, dimeru. Amen. And on page 108, those who are comfortable to do so, I invite you to please rise. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. La 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 la. Baruch Hu et Adonai Hamivorach Hamivorach Baruch Adonai Hamivorach Leolam Leolam Vahed. Praise Adonai, to whom our praise is due. Praise Adonai, to whom our praise is due. Praise Adonai, to whom our praise is due, now and forever. La 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 la, la 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 la. La 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 la, la 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 la. La 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 la, la 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 la. La 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 la. Page 110. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, yotzer or uvorei choshech, oseh shalom uvorei et hakol, hameir la'aretz v'ladarim aleha berachamim, uvtuvo mechadesh b'chol yom tamid ma'aseh v'reshit. Marabu ma'asecha Adonai, kulam b'chochma asita, malach haaretz kinyanecha. Titbarach Adonai Eloheinu, al shevach ma'aseh yadecha, Ve'al me'ore or sha'asita yifa'aruch hasela, or chadash al Tzion ta'ir, v'nizkechu lanu mehera le'oro, Baruch ata Adonai yotzer ha'me'orot. Page 113 at the bottom, we join together. Love your neighbor as yourself, you said, and light blinded we saw that inner and outer worlds are one as you are one. You spoke and we wrote. We reached for you down the centuries, your light moving before us as we climbed and fell back and climbed again, your Sinai of life. Baruch ata Adonai habocher ba'amo Yisrael be'ahava. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai echad. 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 Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Leholam Vahed. Baruch Shem Kevod Malchuto, Leholam Vahed. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai echad. Please be seated. Comfortable, be seated. V'ahavtaha את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם להיות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אמת, אמת ויציב ואהוב וחביב. Page 121, again the bottom of the page, responsively. The eternal truth is that you alone are God and there is none else. Let them beat their swords into plowshares and their spears. You shall not hate your brother nor your sister in your heart. Why do you crush my people and oppress the poor, asks God. Praise to God Most High. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar ba'kodesh, nora tehilot, osefele, la 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 la, ya la 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 la. Lie, 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 lie. שירה חדשה, שיבחו גאולים לשמך, על שפת הים. יחד כולם, הודו והמליכו ואמרו. מי כמוך באלים, אדוני. מי כמוך נדר בקודש, נורא תהילות, אוסף פלא. אדוני ימלוך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. Sur Yisrael, Kuma behezrat Yisrael, Ufdei chinumecha, Yehuda veYisrael. Go aleinu, Adonai tzivahot shemo, Kedosh Yisrael. Baruch ata Adonai, Gal Yisrael. Beginning on page 124, our tefillah, the Shemona Esrei, the Amidah, the central part of our worship service. The ark will be open. I invite you to rise, and we join in the first several pages, join in chanting together, and then we'll continue silently, privately, until our prayers for peace. So on page 124. Adonai sifatai tiftach, ufi yagi tehilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips, that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu v'imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, v'Konei Hakol, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיי הכל אתה רב להושיע, מוריד הטל. מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיי הכל ברחמים רבים, סומך נופלים ורופא חולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר, מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומידו מלך, מלך ממית ומחיה ומתניח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי הכל. נקדש את שמך בעולם, כשם שמקדישים אותו בשמי מרום, ככתוב על יד נביאיך, וקרא זה ואמר, קדוש, 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 אדוני צבאות, מלוא כל הארץ כבודו. אדיר אדירנו אדוני אדוננו, מאר שמך בכל הארץ, ברוך כבוד אדוני ממקום. אחד הוא אלוהינו, הוא אבינו ומלכנו, הוא מושיענו והוא ישמיענו, ורחמיו לעיני כל חי. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, מלוך אדוני לעולם, אלוהי ציון, לדור ודור, הללויה. לדור ודור נגיד גודלך, ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש. לשבחך אלוהינו, מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד. ברוך אתה אדוני, האב הקדוש. We'll continue silently, privately, again, either in the words of the Hebrew and the traditional prayers that are in the prayer book through page 139, or the thoughts and meditations of our own hearts on this Shabbat. Page 140. This is Stephen Dropkin's interpretation of Sim Shalom, a prayer for peace. Sim Shalom, Tova uvracha, Chen v'chesed, v'rachamim, Sim Shalom, Shalom Tova uvracha, Chen v'chesed, v'rachamim, Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael amecha, Sim Shalom, Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael amecha, Sim Shalom, Tova uvracha, Chen v'chesed, v'rachamim, Sim Shalom, Tova uvracha, Chen v'chesed, v'rachamim, Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael amecha, Sim Shalom, Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael amecha, Sim Shalom, La 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 la, la 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 la, la 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 la. La 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 la. Baruch atah Adonai, hamvarech amo Yisrael v'shalom. Page 141. Please join me in this prayer for peace together, the bottom of the page. Grant us peace, your most precious gift, O eternal source of peace, and give us the will to proclaim its message to all the peoples of the earth. Bless our country as a safeguard of peace, its advocate among the nations. May contentment reign within our borders, health and happiness within our homes. Strengthen the bonds of friendship and fellowship among all the inhabitants of our world. Plant virtue in every soul, and may the love of your name hallow every home and every heart. Praised are you, Adonai, who blesses your people with peace. Baruch atah Adonai, hamvarech et amo Yisrael v'shalom. We'll continue with our Torah service, Seder Kriyat HaTorah, page 244. As we open the Ark and continue with our prayers, Michael, would you assist and the bima? Ein kamocha ba'Elohim Adonai, ve'ein kema'asecha, malchutecha mamim, umemshaltecha b'chol dor v'hador. Adonai melech, Adonai malach, Adonai yimloch leolam va'ed, Adonai oz le'amo yiten, Adonai yivarech et amo v'shalom, av harachamim, eitiva b'rtzonecha et Zion, tivne chomot Yerushalayim, tivne chomot Yerushalayim, ki becha levad batachnu, melech Elram v'nisa, Adon olamim. Ki mitzion tetzeh Torah, ki mitzion tetzeh Torah, udevar Adonai mirushalayim. In this scroll is the secret of our people's life from Sinai until now. Its teaching is love and justice, goodness and hope. Freedom is its gift to all who treasure it. We're now page 148. Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah, 248, I'm sorry. Baruch Shenatan Torah, Torah, Le'amo Yisrael, V'kedushato, Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Echad Eloheinu, Gadol Adonenu, Kadosh Shemo, Gadol Adonai iti, Uneramima Shemo Yachdav, Lecha Adonai HaGedula, VeHaGevura, VeHaTiferet, VeHaNetzach, VeHaHod, Ki Chol Bashamayim, Uvaretz, Ki Chol Bashamayim, Uvaretz, Lecha Adonai, Hamamlacha, Ve'amihit Nahaseh, Lechol Rosh. Please be seated. So a few words of introduction and explanation. First, in light of and in deference to the season in which we find ourselves, and the heat and the tone of Shabbat at this time here in Green Valley, I'm going to make the rabbinic decision that we'll just have the one aliyah. We'll still read 3 aliyot worth of Torah, but we're just going to have Mike. So you don't have to be schizophrenic. You don't have to divide yourselves into 3, but we'll only just have the one aliyah for blessing and reading the Torah. The portion is known as Akev. The simplest translation of Akev would just be because. We've all used that phrase. Moses used that phrase in addressing the children of Israel. I'm sure that several out of the hundreds of thousands of them said, "Why are we doing this? Mo, what's going on?" And he said, "Akev, because I said so, because God said so, because that's the way it is." This is all part. We're still near the beginning. We're only in the 11th chapter of the book of Devarim, of Deuteronomy. This is still part of Moses's farewell sermon, if you will. It's his revision, his recapitulation of the experience of the Israelites after having left Egypt and wandering in the desert, being at Mount Sinai and establishing themselves as God's people, and also learning by experience what it means to be an extended family, if not even a society. So when they ask questions or when they complain, Moses now at this point is comfortable just saying, because Akev. And here are some examples then of how he teaches the people how to respond, just like a good teacher in class, or today, in our day, virtually online or Zoom class. Because now let me explain it. Now let me explain it to you in terms that you might understand. This is the source of words that we've already included in our worship service of the Shema and V'ahavta. Matter of fact, you'll hear familiar words from the 2nd and the 3rd paragraphs of the Shema. Those of you that are more familiar with the traditional prayer book rather than the Reformed prayer book that we're using, and say, "Oh, that sounds familiar." That's because it's from the 2nd and 3rd paragraphs of the Shema and the V'ahavta, with which many of us might be familiar. But this is Moses's explanation in response to just the simple statement, Shema Yisrael, literal, because. This is what you should do because I said so, because God said so, because the world and the society need you to do these things. And the rabbis long ago, it's an English commentary rather than an English language commentary rather than a Hebrew one. The best answer to the question, why, is because, but don't phrase it that way. Phrase it as be a cause. be a cause for goodness, be a cause for kindness, be a cause for love, and be a cause for peace among all. So that's the context in which we read these words from the 11th chapter of the book of Deuteronomy, near the end of the portion, Akef. Mike, I'm going to start here. Baruch Adonai HaBarach Le'olam Va'ed.
Baruch Adonai HaBarach Le'olam Va'ed. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu Melech Haolam Asher B'charbanu Mikol Ha'amim V'natan Lanu Et Torato. Baruch Atah Adonai Notein HaTorah.
Amen. V'hayayim shamoa tishma'u el mitzvotai asher anochi mitzaveh etchem hayom. If you surely listen and pay heed to my commandments, that which I am commanding you this day, le'ahava et Adonai Eloheinu la'avdo b'chol levavchem u'b'chol nafshechem, that you should love Adonai your God and serve God with all your heart and with all your soul. V'natati matar artzachem bi'ito yoreh u'malkosh, that I will then, as a reward, I will bring the dew upon all of your land in its appropriate season, the early rain and the late rain. V'asafta degancha v'tiroshcha v'yitzarcha v'natati esef besadcha lidhemtecha. And then you shall gather in all the produce of your land, of the field, the grains, and the fruits, and I will maintain the grass of the field, so that your beasts, your cattle, will be able to graze. The achalta v'savata, so that you will be able to eat, and you will be able to be satisfied, satiated in eating all of your fill. Tishmeru lachem pen yiftach levavchem, but be careful that your hearts will be opened, v'startem v'avadatem Elohim acherim, lest you turn aside and serve other gods, v'hishtachavitem lahem, that you will bow down to them, v'chara'af Adonai bachem, and then God's anger will be turned towards you, v'atzarat hashamayim, and God will stop up all the heavens, v'lo yihiyeh matar ha'adama, then there will not be the dew or the moisture on the land. Lo titenet yevula, the land will not give its produce. V'avadatam mehera me'al ha'aretz hatova asher Adonai noten lachem. And then you will be forced to leave quickly the land, the good land, which Adonai your God is giving to you. V'samtem et devarai ele al levavchem v'al nafshechem. You shall place all these words that I am giving to you today upon your heart and upon your soul. Ukshartem otam la'ot al yadchem v'hayu letotafot bein einechem. You shall bind them as signs on your hand, and they shall be frontlets between your eyes. Ulamadatem otam et b'nechem. You shall teach them to your children. L'daber bam, so that they will always be speaking of them. V'shivtecha b'veitecha uvelechtecha v'derech uv'shachbecha uv'kumecha. And this should occur when you are sitting or dwelling in your house, when you're walking by the way, when you rise up and when you lie down. Uchtavtem al mezuzot beitecha uvisharecha. You shall write them as mezuzot upon your doorposts and upon your gates. Lama'an yirbu yemechem v'imei v'nechem al ha'adama asher nishba Adonai la'avotechem latet lahem kimei hashamayim al ha'aretz. And thus will you merit the reward of long life upon the days, you and your children, upon this land, on the days which Adonai your God is swearing to you to give you, as numerous as the stars of the heavens upon the earth. Ki im shamor tishmerun et kol hamitzvah hazot asher anochi mitzaveh etchem la'asotah. If you then carefully guard all of the mitzvah, the commandments, the life-sanctifying acts which I am giving you, I'm commanding you this day, and do them. Le'ahava et Adonai Elohechem, to love Adonai your God. Lalechet b'chol derachav, to walk in all his paths. Uledav kavo, and to cling unto him. V'horish Adonai et kol hagoyim ha'eled milifnechem, then God will surely disperse all of the enemy nations who approach before you. V'yirishtem goyim gedolim v'atzumim mikem kol hamakom asher tidroch kaf raglechem bo lachem yihiyeh. And if you do so, then all of the great and powerful nations will bow before you and will allow you sovereignty wherever your feet, in whichever paths your feet walk. Ki yihiyeh min hamidbar v'halavanon, and that will stretch from the desert. That's the Negev desert. Halvanon, that's up to the Lebanon. Min hana'ar nahar prat, from the great river, that's the Euphrates. Va'ad hayam ha'acharon, to the great sea, that's the Mediterranean. These yihiyeh gvulchem, these will be your borders. Lo yityatzev ish bifnechem pachdechem umora'achem yitain Adonai Elohim al pnei kol haaretz asher tidrachu ba ka'asher diber lachem. Thus shall you not be afraid, thus shall you stand in awe, and others will be in awe of you. For Adonai your God is placing you here upon the land on which you shall dwell, on which you shall walk your path, as it has been spoken to you today.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah v'emes v'chayei olam v'kavos Eloheinu. Baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah.
Amen. Please rise as we honor the Torah. Vizot haTorah asher sam Moshe lifnei bnei Yisrael al pi Adonai v'yad Moshe al shlosha devarim al shlosha devarim Haolam omer al shlosha devarim al shlosha devarim haolam omer al haTorah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al gemilut chasadim al haTorah ve'al ha'avodah ve'al gemilut chasadim. Seated. In the presence of the Torah, as a community and extended friends and family at prayer, we offer a Misha Berach, a prayer of healing and wholeness on behalf of our loved ones, our neighbors and our friends, all those in our community, those who are ill, those who are alone, those who are suffering and in pain, those who are hospitalized and facing or recovering from surgeries. We pray on their behalf for refuah shalema, for complete and whole recovery, refuah tanefesh, refuah taguf, renewal of body and spirit. We turn to page 253 We will be joining in singing Debbie Friedman's interpretation of the traditional Mishaberach Lacholim, a prayer of healing and wholeness for those who are ill. And in our community and our congregation, for those who are in our sanctuary this morning, as well as those who are at home. We wish Shalemut, we wish healing and wholeness to these on our Mishaberach list: Chris Anderson, Avram Yekosiel Ben Gittel, Harvey Beam, Jerry Bellinger, Irene Case, Marty Cohn, Sebastian DiLiberto, Alan Delman, Heidi Demarest, Jerry Gail Feldman, Melissa Feldman, Nancy Feldman, Bob Fleming, Lori Fly, Jeffrey Saul Gervan, Ruth Gossman, Kay Grask, Rebecca Halloran, Teresa Halloran, Larry Hoffman Rosenfeld, Bo Jessup, Dawn Kitts, Sharon Lewis, Billy Lawson, Werner Lawson, Dory Lessa, Wendy Levy, Sam Miller, Tim Orrock, Bernie Pincus, Marley Pincus, Roberta Rabin, Eric Rottenberg, Dory Roman, Mel Roman, Barbara Roswell, Abraham Raphael Ben Shoshana, Nancy Schwam, Lou Simon, Linda Smith, and Ruth Stevens. Are there others whose names anyone would wish to mention? Please, Michael. May they know of our thoughts and our prayers, and may God bless them with refuah and shalemut. Mishaberach Avotenu Mekor habracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Yisheberach Imotenu Mekor habracha Lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen. Blessings for the Haftarah on page 254. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bachar b'nviim tovim v'ratzav divreihem hanemarim be'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'torah uv'Moshe avdo U'Yisrael amo, u'v'nviei ha'emet v'tzedek. The Haftarah, the second Haftarah of consolation after Tisha B'Av, comes from the prophet Isaiah. These are selections from chapters 50 and 51 of the book of Isaiah. Shimu Elai Rodfei Tzedek Mivakshe Adonai, Habitu El Tzur Chutzavtem, Ve'el Mekavet Bor Nukratem. Habitu el Avraham avichem ve'el Sarah tachol alechem ki echad karativ. Listen to me, you who pursue justice, you who seek Adonai. Look to the rock you were hewn from, to the quarry you were dug from. Look back to Abraham your father and to Sarah who brought you forth. For he was only one when I called him. Va'avarchehu, va'arbehu. I blessed him, and I made him into many and a nation. Ki nicham Adonai Tzion. Truly the Lord has comforted Zion, comforted all her ruins. He has made her wilderness like Eden, her desert like the garden of the Lord. Sason v'simcha yimatzeva, todah v'kol zimra. Gladness and joy shall abide there amongst them, thanksgiving and the sound of music. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, sur kol haolamim, Sadiq b'chol hadorot, ha'el ha'ne'eman, ha'omer ve'oseh, ha'mdaber u'mkayem, shekol devarav emet v'tzedek, al ha'torah, ve'al ha'avodah, ve'al ha'nevi'im, ve'al yom ha'shabbat hazeh, shenatata lanu, Adonai Eloheinu, likdusha v'limnucha, lechavod ultifaret. Al hakol, Adonai Eloheinu anachnu modim lach, umvarchim otach, yitbarach shimcha b'fi kol chai, tamid leolam va'ed. Baruch ata Adonai, mekadesh hashabbat. Amen.
Do you want to walk around a little bit or not?
Why don't? Okay. Page 256. Yahalalu et Shem Adonai Shemo Levado. Let us praise the name of Adonai. God's name alone is exalted. Please rise. Hodo al eretz v'shamayim vayarem keren le'amo tehila lechol chasidav livnei Yisrael am kerovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah. Etz chaim hi lemachazikim ba v'tomcheha meyushar deracheha darchei noam v'chol netivoteha shalom. Ashivenu Adonai Elecha v'nashuva Chadesh, Chadesh Yameinu, Chadesh Yameinu Kekedem. Please be seated. Well, those of you here in the sanctuary and joining us at home, those who have been with me for much of this past calendar year, know that it's been a very difficult year, not only in the sense of the pandemic and the illnesses and the deaths with which many of us have encountered and faced, but also, as I've mentioned, sadly, throughout the year, it has been a very difficult year for the rabbinic community. We've lost quite a few of my colleagues, teachers, classmates, friends, even some of my students. It's been a very, very difficult year. And unfortunately, another one of the rabbis, we'll talk a little bit more about him, passed away on Friday morning. And this is a name that I cannot claim any particular closeness to. Never met the man, but I've studied the man in many opportunities, in many situations, and some of you have as well. Rabbi Adin Eben Yisrael Steinsaltz passed away Friday morning in Jerusalem at the age of 83. Adin Steinsaltz has been referred to as a once in a millennium rabbi, scholar, teacher, sage, leader of the Jewish people. We frequently talk of someone who is among the Gedolei Hador, of the great ones of our generation. But literally, whether you come from a liberal or a traditional orientation, whether you have been served and taught by a Reform rabbi, conservative rabbi, Reconstructionist rabbi, renewal rabbi, Orthodox rabbi, ultra-Orthodox rabbi, all of us pay great tribute to the teaching and the dedication. Those two words, incidentally, are connected in Hebrew as well, to the teaching and the dedication of Adin Steinsaltz. He had a stroke 4 years ago and has not been able to speak for the last 4 years. And so many in the academic and in the scholarly and rabbinic world have been waiting for this day, knowing that it would come. Steinsaltz's, what they call the magnum opus, his great achievement, boggles the mind. He spent 45 years, on an average of 17 hours a day, 6 days a week, for 45 years, translating all 63 volumes of the Talmud, translating and commenting, interpreting from the Aramaic original language of the Talmud into modern Hebrew. And as if that weren't enough, he also personally supervised the translations then of his Hebrew translation into, because he was fluent in, English, French, German, and Russian as well. 17 hours a day, 6 days a week on the average. She did take off for holidays. 45 years worth. A once in a millennium scholar. His work, his teaching, the impact that he had and will continue to have for generations to come can legitimately be compared to the impact of, and here I'll mention names that some, if not all of you, might be familiar with, no matter whether you participate in Saturday morning Torah study or not, but most people are still familiar with names like Rashi and Rambam, that's Maimonides. Steinsaltz's reputation and his gifts to the Jewish people and to the world of Torah study and Talmud study will be for generations on the same level of Rashi and Maimonides. And incidentally, lest you think that you want to add to your library You don't need anymore to go out and purchase all 63 volumes. If anybody wants to make a donation to the Temple Library, we'll make an entire. No, you don't need to go out and buy it, because now it's available in Hebrew, English, French, German, or Russian. It's available online through an organization called Sefaria. You might know the name, the Hebrew word Sefer. That's a book. And a Sefaria is more like a library or a collection of books. Sefaria.org. That was funded by someone. Here's the 6 degrees of connection. Is that what they call it? Here's where I do know. That was funded by a man, of blessed memory, a man by the name of William Davidson in Detroit. A very, very well-known philanthropist. Unfortunately, all passed away a few years ago as well. But Bill Davidson, through his educational foundation, funded the online acquisition of the entire Steinsaltz Talmud in all of those different languages, or in any of those different languages, available now to the entire world free of charge. Steinsaltz was not limited only to Talmud. According to some, he also published more than 60 other books. He also personally established yeshivot, those are academies of Jewish higher learning, in Israel and in Russia after the fall of the Soviet Union. Although he had been born into a secular family in what was then Palestine, became Israel in 1937, he started learning with a Talmud tutor at the age of 10. And it is said that Steinsaltz, who always had this little sparkling gleam in his eye, it was said that he was, some of you may know the phrase, he was a little bit of a trumpeter. He was a little bit of a troublemaker when he was growing up and when he was studying. That he would always challenge his teachers. He would always then, as an adult, challenge the political and the Orthodox establishment. Had a touch of mischief, if you would. And he was well known that for the following kind of act. When he would go to visit some of these academies, some of these yeshivot around the world that he had helped to found or funded or inspired, he would always choose 1 or 2 students in each of the classes, would pull them off to the side, would sit them down, and would make them memorize the most difficult, complex of questions so that they could ask their teachers, and confound the teachers who would think that these students were indeed so curious, so inquisitive, and so brilliant. He did those kind of little tricks. His most famous phrase was a play on the English phrase from the Torah. He would say, my goal is to let my people know, not let my people go, but let my people know. And this particular quotation I've always loved from him. When you learn Talmud, you learn about yourself. For learning one page, it's called a daf, one daf of Talmud, one page of Talmud is equivalent to 2 or 3 sessions with a psychoanalyst. That's why Talmud has been so important to the Jewish people. Jewish learning is a mirror into our souls. 2 other comments. While I can't claim any connection other than through Bill Davidson, I can't claim connection to Adin Steinsaltz, Zichrono Livracha. One of my former students does tell this, who's now a rabbi, does tell this story. His name is Rabbi Josh Weinberg. He grew up in Skokie, Illinois, for any of you who are Chicago people. Okay? So Josh, who made Aliyah, now lives in Israel. one particular Friday evening had been invited to lead kind of a song session. He plays guitar, but lead kind of a song session at a hotel in Jerusalem for some of you may know the organization Birthright that sends college-age students and early young professionals on a free 10-day trip to Israel. Incidentally, Bill Davidson was one of the funders of that program as well. And so Josh Weinberg, many of the particular Birthright groups, in Hebrew they're called Taglit, were staying at a particular hotel, and he had been invited to come and do like a Shabbat Shirah, a Shabbat song session for some of the young people. And apparently there were also some Orthodox Birthright groups staying in the same hotel. Now, obviously, they wouldn't participate in a song session with Rabbi Weinberg playing guitar, but their Friday night guest was Rabbi Steinsaltz, who had come to do a little Talmud shiur for them. And at the end of the evening, my colleague, my friend, Rabbi Weinberg, is walking through the lobby of the hotel carrying his guitar case. And he saw Rabbi Steinsaltz, whom he had never met, but certainly could identify him and recognize him, sitting on a chair in the lobby. Josh went up to Rabbi Steinsaltz. Shabbat Shalom, L'chvod Harav, good evening, good Shabbos, Rabbi. And Rabbi Steinsaltz looked up at him and said, good Shabbos, and looked at him and asked, I guess if this was in Hebrew, pointed at his guitar case and says, are you in the army? Is that a gun? Because soldiers were allowed to carry guns on Shabbos, but chas v'chalila, you should be carrying, a musical instrument, a guitar. And Josh looked at him and answered him with a smile, and he says, No, dear Rabbi, it's a guitar. I've been singing Shabbos Miras. We've been singing Shabbat songs with some of the young people. Can I ask you a question? Rabbi Steinsaltz looked at him and said, certainly. He says, when will we know if it's all right to be carrying and playing a guitar on Friday night in Jerusalem? And Steinsaltz looked at him, according to what Josh has told many of us. Steinsaltz looked at him and said, when the Mashiach becomes, when the Messiah comes, the Messiah will tell us whether it's okay to play guitar and sing Jewish songs, Hebrew songs on Shabbos. Okay, but he didn't end there. He looked up at this Reform rabbi, young man, and said, and do me a favor. When you hear the answer, come and find me. Okay. So Steinsaltz, while he certainly was an Orthodox rabbi, teacher, proponent, certainly was willing to recognize the legitimacy, maybe not the authenticity, but the legitimacy of even the Reform movement participating in modern Jewish identity, and with a sense of humor, that same sense of mischief. When the Messiah comes, make sure you find me, so we'll both get the answer to this question. So let me leave you with one other teaching from Rabbi Adin Steinsaltz, whose memory we honor on this Shabbat. Our goal is always to aim for greater height, to be constantly struggling and striving to do better and to be closer to God. These are pregnant times. That's his term. These are pregnant times throughout the world. Just as in geology, we have breaking lines between huge blocks of earth, so today we are at the juncture between great blocks of time. This is a time and place of storm and volcano and of becoming. In today's reality, a small act can have far-reaching consequences beyond our imagination, whereas things that will be done perhaps 5 or 10 years from today may be much less effective. This is precisely the meaning of pregnant time. Anything can be born, and this is exactly the time when one must not go to sleep. Although we do not choose our own soul or the way in which it reveals itself, each one of us is capable of discovering more noble elements within ourselves. The inner sacred work before us is to find a way to access the higher levels of our own soul. Then we must cause those higher levels to be manifest within our lives. Kei Mihi Ratzon, with thanks and respect to the teaching of Adin Steinsaltz, Zichrono Livracha. We continue on page 282, Aleinu on the bottom of page 282, and then our memorial prayers. Again, I invite you to rise as the art is on. Aleinu l'shabeach ladon hakol, latei gdula liotzer bereshit, shelo asanu kigoye haratzot, v'lo samanu k'mishpachot adama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, v'gohor aleinu kechol hamonam, v'anachnu korim, u'mishtachavim u'modim, lifnei melech malchei hamlachim, hakadosh baruch hu. Page 285, together. Let the time not be distant, O God, when all shall turn to you in love, when corruption and evil shall give way to integrity and goodness, when superstition shall no longer enslave the mind, nor idolatry blind the eye. O may all created in your image become one in spirit and one in friendship, forever united in your service. Then shall your realm be established on earth, and the word of your prophet fulfilled. Adonai will reign forever and ever. On page 287, V'nehemar v'haya Adonai l'melech al kol haaretz v'yom hahu yiyeh Adonai echad u'shemo echad. Be seated. Page 289. In nature's ebb and flow, God's eternal law abides. When tears dim our vision or grief clouds our understanding, we often lose sight of God's eternal plan, yet we know that growth and decay, life and death all reveal a divine purpose. God, who is our support in the struggles of life, is also our hope in death. We have set God before us, we shall not despair, for in God's hands are the souls of all the living and the spirits of all flesh. Under God's protection we abide, by God's love we are comforted. O life of our life, soul of our soul, cause your light to shine into our hearts, fill our spirits with abiding trust in you. Our thoughts turn to those who have departed this earth. We remember our own loved ones, those whom our friends and neighbors have lost, the martyrs of our people whose graves are unmarked. They died al Kiddush Hashem. Those of every race and nation whose lives have been a blessing to humanity. We remember them. We honor, give thanks for their gifts, and we meditate on the meaning of love and loss, of life and death. As a community, we think of loved ones whom death has recently taken from us. Even during this past week and this past month, we remember Ralph Block, Terry Freed, and Jeannie Gordon. We remember those who died at this season in years past. We draw them into our hearts with our own, especially in this, the time of the anniversary of their death, of their passing, their yortzites. Those who died in the past, we remember on this particular week and next week as well. Julius Bushman, Mel Feldman, Bennett Finkelstein, Gervan, Ruth Nathan, Blimna Sturman Friedman, Gary Schachter, and especially as a community, we remember those who have gone to their eternal home during this past year, this past period of 11 months. We remember Sarah Deitch, Michelle Kohana, Janelle Mitchell, Jim Mardinley, Lanny Rutenberg, Bud Stein, Ted Walden, Yetta Weston, Alan Winfield, and Loretta Ziegelman. Zichronam Livracha. Are there other names anyone wishes to mention? May God bless them with eternal peace. The words of the Kaddish Yatom, Mourners Kaddish, page 209. Traditionally, we rise as one congregation, reciting words hallowed by centuries of faith. Yitkadal v'yitkadash Shemei Rabbah. V'yalma dinu b'agalau v'zman kariv v'imru amen. Yehei Shmei Rabbah mivarach le'olam olod me'ol maya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach. V'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal Shmei kudsha barichu. La'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tushbechata v'nechamata. Da'amiran b'yalma v'imru amen. Yehei shlama rabba min shemaya v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. O se shalom b'imromav. Huya aseh shalom. Aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'al kol b'nei Adam v'imru amen. May the one who creates harmony on high bring a sense of comfort to those who are bereaved amongst us. May God, in answer to our prayers, bring peace to us, to all Israel, and to all humanity, to which we say, Amen. Ose shalom bimroma, huyah shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, ve'imru, imru, amen. Yahaseh shalom, Yahaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, Yahaseh shalom, Yahaseh shalom, shalom aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael. Please be seated. Again, words of Shabbos and welcome and Shabbat Shalom to all. Ask you to please be safe and be healthy. And this is still somewhat of an experimental mode, and we would appreciate your patience, your cooperation, and certainly we appreciate your comments and suggestions or questions or concerns that you might have. Any announcements that we need to share?
Steve's program on Thursday is going to be Jews of Southern Africa.
Steve Marin doing a program Thursday morning,
Thursday,
10 o'clock,
Is
on Jews of
Southern Africa.
Southern Africa. Okay. All right. Again, thank you. It's good to see all of you. Shabbat Shalom, and wish you well. Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, Shabbat, 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 Shabbat Shalom.